Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of the Whiskey Ring Podcast. Today, we're going to the heart of New York City. We're talking to Darron and Jose from the Goodnight Group, which you might better know as Fine and Rare, and the Flatiron Room. Darron, Jose, welcome.
Thanks,
Thank you
David.
for having us, David.
Pleasure to be here.
So, for people who might not know, why don't we give a quick rundown of each establishment and what they mean, what the establishments were established to do. And Darron, you want to jump in first on that one?
Yeah, sure. The Flatiron Room was founded in 2012 by Tommy Tardy. It's to me personally, it's an example of the kind of like bygone era of a speakeasy bar, very kind of prohibition style. The ethos behind the bar is kind of a sensory experience. You're having live music, you're having great food, cocktails, whiskey. You're surrounded by whiskey in our bar. I don't know, David, if you've had the chance to pop into any of our establishments, but the way that Tommy has organized both bars, and Jose could talk at Fine and Rare, you are surrounded by lockers of whiskey. When you walk in, you feel like that same way if anybody walks into the first distillery tour, when they walk into the warehouse surrounded by barrels, there's that kind of same feel of just being surrounded by whiskey. And I think the general feel of our bar is to create like a sensory experience to be surrounded by great sound. You have fantastic food and great cocktails and a whiskey selection that is rather large. I think would be a coy way of putting it. We're currently sitting in upwards of 1,200 expressions of whiskey. So we try to make sure that we're really showcasing whiskey as an entity in New York.
Awesome. And Jose, pardon me, Jose, how about the Fine and Rare?
Yeah, we opened our doors on 2017. Where the same thing. We kind of went with the same theme as the Flatiron Room. We're a whiskey-based cocktail, but we're also more food influenced. But we're also like try to diverse and other things, like we try to bring in more rums, tequilas, mezcals. We're also more spirit forward, and whiskey being our main thing.
Awesome. And yeah, the aesthetic that you walk into, I always loved it from the first time I've gone to the Flatiron Room and kind of just having those lockers of not only the lockers of whiskey, but also the fact that all of that is accessible.
Yeah. It always there's always at least one or two customers that are kind of perplexed when you're trying to lean over and get behind them into a locker. They don't really know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on a busy night, you'll see everyone on staff just kind of climbing ladders, trying to get into the lockers from above, and you'd be sitting in a booth and just see a light shining from above and go, "What the hell is going on here?" But it's all in the service of finding the right pour. So, jumping into your own journeys, how did you guys get to join the group, and what was any kind of training or pre Goodnight Group that led you there?
Well, my accent, as I'm sure you can tell, is not native to Brooklyn, where I currently am. I'm from Glasgow, Scotland. I started bartending around the age of 17 at a rather famous bar in Glasgow called the Lismore. Held maybe around 300 to 350 whiskies, which was considered a decent collection at the time. We were part of the group of the Lismore that won the Dram magazine Best Whiskey Bar of the Year, early 2000s. And it really kind of kickstarted my kind of passion with whiskey. Before that, especially in Glasgow, there's a weird kind of general feel that all Scottish people drink whiskey. That is not true. And so I was definitely much more of a kind of vodka Coke or whatever kind of thing. And it really opened my eyes to the different kind of expressions and flavors that the whiskey had. So it was a great starting point for me. I was at Lismore for about 8 years. My wife is American, so we had done some long distance. I'd moved to New York, and I'd worked at a couple of bars before, but my goal was always to get to the Flatiron Room. I'd actually emailed Tommy and the previous management when I was in Scotland asking for a position. So I think that always kind of pricked Tommy's ears. I applied, it's amazing what time is done with COVID. I think 2017, 2016, I think it was I applied. and I started bartending. And at the Flatiron Room, I'm sure just as fine and rare, there is a, for the amount of whiskey we have and the style of service that we want to bring for the customer, there is a rather extensive training program. Looking into small and simple things such as, just literally how to set a table in a specific manner, how to pour a bottle of wine, open a blank, moving into, regions of whiskey in Scotland, moving into peated, unpeated, the process of creating whiskey. So, I mean, you really, you have to have a passion for kind of fine dining service as well as, whiskey. And I speak, I'm sure, for both bars, to want to work in these establishments. I mean it in the nicest way when I say that, if you come in and you think that Fireball is a premium spirit, then you probably wouldn't be asked for a second interview, if I put it bluntly.
That's fair. And how about you, Jose?
Well, I think I started bartending at the age of 23. Actually, I started in a bar in downtown in Soho. It's called Naked Lunch, which it was mostly more cocktail forward than anything else. Did take a little break in between. I think I started working at the Flatiron Room in 2016, which I had originally started as a bar back because I had been off as bartending for a couple of years at that point. So I didn't have the confidence to just jump in and start bartending again and stuff. And I quickly moved up. I got really into drinking whiskey. Like Darron was saying, our company is more kind of educates a lot of us with brand ambassadors, meeting up with brand ambassadors, training on whiskeys, regions, everything that we need to like train our staff with. And it really encouraged me to learn more about whiskey and all of our stuff. And it's been a nice ride working for this company.
Yeah, it's a great. I mean, Tommy's one of the aspects that I love is Tommy regularly organizes staff outings. So just as recently as that was last Monday, Jose. We went to the Taconic Distillery. And so, as Tommy puts it quite nicely, it's it's one part staff training, education. It's two parts teamwork and camaraderie, and this idea of working as a cohesive unit. And by organizing these staff trips, as Jose mentioned, we have brand ambassadors, reps coming in. So whenever we get new whiskies, or if we feel the staff are maybe not as knowledgeable of a certain brand of whiskey or a certain style, Jose and I collaborate. We'll talk to reps. They tend to come into our bar and we'll do tastings, we'll go through information. It's a very hands-on style, and it really helps to benefit our ability to sell. You obviously have to know the product, and when you have upwards of 1,200 for Flatiron Room, I'm sure fine rares in the very highs as well. You have to know, basic information, and then if you want to continue to be able to make that sale, you have to know more. So this continual kind of hands-on learning that Tommy very much promotes within the company, it's very beneficial for staff. From newbie into whiskey to someone like myself, who I'd call a functioning alcoholic, or you could say that's a Somali or whatever. This constant having to learn. It helps you just really promote, your own want and passion for whiskey. So I think that's a big driving force of our bars. You really see that with our staffs from both locations. You can ask a question about anything, and generally we have the ability to give you a comprehensive or cohesive answer. So I do think the training aspect that Tommy employs is really, really good, really hands-on for our staff.
And I mean, before we go even deeper on that, how do you guys enjoy Taconic?
It's good. Really tasty stuff. Yeah, very nice whiskeys. We got to try some stuff. I don't know if we can actually talk about this. we got to try some stuff that currently isn't on the market, which again is a great benefit of our positions. They also they're building a second rick house at the moment, and something I don't think Jose had seen or I had seen. They actually had like shipping containers. Basically, they were housing their barrels in shipping containers, and the master blender. Brendan was explaining that it actually creates a heat not dissimilar to Kentucky. So it was helping to kind of further the aging process. But at one stage when he opened the shipping container, if you'd stepped too closely in while the door had swung open, you would be knocked out by the extremely pungent smells, let's say. Obviously because the steel box doesn't really allow for a lot of aeration. So it was like walking into an alcoholic sauna. which wasn't a bad thing, but it was quite an experience.
I ask because Taconic is one of my, if not my favorite New York distillery.
Oh, nice.
So Paul Coughlin, founder, was one of my earliest guests. Met Brendan a couple weeks ago over a travel bar, and I've been meaning to get back up there. I haven't been up there since like the early days of COVID. So now that I know
their stuff is tasty. Very very good juice.
Yeah, we definitely enjoyed a couple of them.
Yeah,
I was really impressed.
Yeah, the shipping container thing was a new development for me, but as you said, it ends up mimicking Kentucky a little bit. So for me, their liquid has been able to mature a little faster.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the rye specifically, I'm a huge rye fan. The rye was fantastic, and so we I think I took a bottle home. I think Jose got a bottle as well. So that's sitting on my shelf about a third way done. So that's, as you can see, from Monday. So I do like it.
Absolutely. I love it all, but I would agree. The cast strength rye is my favorite from them. So this education piece and having your staff know what they're pouring. It's one of the biggest reasons I wanted to talk to you guys, because it's so unique, it seems, in the world of especially like high-end bars, in both in terms of quantity but also in quality. There are plenty of bars around the country now that are pushing like 3,000-4,000 bottles on there, but if you don't know what you're talking about, then it's really up to the consumer. So was it at all intimidating finding out that you'd have to go through all this training to then, let me rephrase that. Do you find out that you get the job first and then go through the training, or do you have to go through the training first and then kind of get a trial run?
I'm going by memory for myself. The manager at the time at Flatiron Room was young Kim, who was a fantastically knowledgeable manager. If I remember rightly, I applied through young Kim, and I have I'm going by memory again here. I've got a certificate of expertise in whiskey from the Edinburgh Whiskey Society, and I think if I remember rightly, when I showed Young that, she kind of ran away and then came back. And also, I think Jose can maybe guarantee this, but I think I'm the only Scotsman who's ever worked for the company. So I think I have that. I don't want to. If there's any Scottish people listening, I apologize, but I think I had that kind of I don't know, like weird effect, so to speak. Like I was a Scotsman in a whiskey bar in New York. They needed a Scotsman that would help. I was a kind of like token Scotsman, so to speak. So if I remember rightly, I got the job, and then once you got the job, you went into the training program. You were given the cocktail list. You were given the information. There's like a proper handbook of the way the bar operates, and then it was kind of going from there. You then had to sit a test, which, if I remember rightly, was kind of what I touched upon before of understanding regions, like being able to name 5 Speyside whiskies, or give me 10 whiskies from the Highlands, etc. And then it was also, if you were, obviously myself, I was applying for as a bartender, it was the knowledge of cocktails and your ability behind the bar. So there was my experience before that was generally kind of more cocktails, and I would say more kind of beer pouring. I was working at the time just before Flatiron at a bar called the Polaner. It was a German brewery. So it was quite a step up for me, but it was what I wanted to do. And so I kind of think I threw myself into it with kind of abandonment, like passion, but there was definitely periods where I was catching myself and being worried that I didn't have the knowledge needed. I am a very proud Scotsman. It took me a long time to say that I liked bourbon. Rye, absolutely gorgeous. I'm a huge rye fan, but I've recently came around to bourbon after a few good trips with Tommy and staff to some great distilleries. So I'm trying not to be as biased, but when I first joined, I definitely didn't know as much about bourbon and rye, so that was my main challenge. But again, as I said, they really implement a kind of hands-on learning style that both benefits you and kind of drives you forward. So I've definitely learned more being at the Flatiron Room, and you learn every single day. So.
Absolutely. Especially me, like when I started there, I had like my knowledge on whiskey was very low. Like I said, I started as a bar back, but young Kim was the head bartender at the moment, which I asked her if she could allow me to come into staff trainings and get my my knowledge. And then from there on, it was just, pretty much taking notes, getting into tasting every single new Scotch bourbon, especially Scotch. I was not very knowledgeable in Scotch at all. And then you start learning about regions and stuff like that. So that's pretty much what the company does. Is like trying to educate every single staff member as much as possible as we can.
And I'm curious now because I know right now your industry is not alone in this, but it's been difficult to kind of find people to staff, especially after the height of the pandemic and bringing more people in. I'm curious what your kind of turnover rate looked like as opposed to maybe others. And I say that as a loaded question because to me, it sounds like you put so much investment into your people that I mean, you guys clearly, you've both been there for, more than half a decade each. So that says something alone in that you're still there and enjoying the job and all that. So did that kind of help you guys through the pandemic and afterwards?
I mean, I would say that it was, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was an extremely tough time, and I'm sure for everyone. Obviously, I would say the hospitality was definitely not very hard. It was really important to us, I think, as a group, and the way that Tommy, I mean, if I can, sorry, let me go back. I mean, the main thing that I remember specifically with the pandemic was the fact that Tommy was very hands-on with the staff again. He made sure that we understood that the bars, we had to shut down if we had to shut down, but this was not the end of the bar. This was not the end of Goodnight Group. Tommy really firmly believed that this was, I want to use the term a blip, but obviously it was much worse than that at the time. But he really wanted to drive home to the staff that we're going to come back stronger. This is just a little bump in the road. We're going to come back. Everything's okay. When we reopened, there was an influx of people wanting to come back to work. I think you kind of hit it on the head is because of our style of bars, because of the kind of premium style of service that we want to attain and the experience that we want to give to our customers. We are looking for specific kind of staff. We're not looking for your, and I don't mean to be rude to anyone out there, but you're like a part-timer or someone that wants to do a certain 1 day a week kind of thing. At the group that we're in, we need people that are passionate about the subject, that are dedicated, that are hardworking, and that work well in a team. And so I think that with COVID, it kind of, I suppose to an extent, you kind of lost people that I might say that you then realize maybe didn't want to do the job. The pandemic, I'm sure, changed a lot of people's minds in terms of their current employment, their trajectory and career path, etc. So there was definitely periods of time where we were losing staff, gaining staff. But I remember primarily it was the encouragement and confidence that Tommy had in the idea that we're going to come back and get back into it. It wasn't easy. I remember, the barriers at the start, the masks. The masks themselves, unfortunately, were very political, piece of clothing, let's just say. So by wearing a mask, you were kind of showcasing what side you are, which is always strange to me. But there was always issues that were going to arise with that. But I think that, I think when we look at where we are now compared to, what's just happened over the past years, I think it's a great example of the strength of the company that we have came back. We never really left. We had to obviously shut down through a government mandate, but I think we were always going to come back. And I knew that the second we came back, it was going to come back and be, people wanted to come back to the bar. Listen, as we said before, Dave, we have customer bottles in both bars. The amount of times when we first opened, we were getting people calling, like, can I come in? Can I get my bottle? There was a definite want of people to come back to our bar. And I remember a lot of customers just walking in, and there was definitely a sense of, happiness and normality kind of coming back. I remember talking to a lot of customers at the start of the opening post-COVID, and they were just so happy to be outside and so happy to be in an environment with live music and a little bit of a show going on and just general having a nice enjoyable social interaction. I think a lot of people obviously really missed that. And again, it was something that I find that the Goodnight Group and both of our venues are very well known for. We are a sensory experience for both venues. So I think a lot of people missed that. So we definitely bounced back, in my opinion, from COVID very well.
And Jose, I want to throw this next question to you, which is that, between the two establishments, of course, both serve food, both have spirits, but they're, as you mentioned earlier, Fine and Rare has a bit more of a food focus. than the Flatiron Room. You know, I know it's they're both on the same spectrum, but slightly more of a food focus.
Yeah,
I'll keep my mouth shut there, David.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah. So
But
yeah, our focus is fine dining as well. We try to give you a nice experience also with live music, everything. So yeah, so we're focused also, like I said, the Flatiron Room obviously is a more whiskey forward restaurant. But we try to be a little bit diverse, bring different types of spirits in. When it comes to mezcal, gin, tequilas, everything, we try to bring a larger experience. And what I mean, in spirit wise, food wise, entertainment wise, we're always just trying to focus that every customer that comes in leaves with an amazing experience that wants to make them come back and enjoy our restaurant. Also, like you said, having bottle keep program, you know, also like it's something that most people haven't heard of. So when they hear, oh, I could buy my bottle here, keep it here, store it here, bring it and like enjoy it with my friends and stuff. So yeah, it's a really nice experience.
yeah, and next question just went right out of my head, which happens quite often, even with coffee in the morning. I should note for listeners, these two gents have been very kind to join on a Saturday morning after working the night before, and I'm sure they'll be working again tonight. So
yeah, first round's on you, David. First round's on you.
Deal, absolute deal. You got, when I was there last, you had me with the a Highland Park single barrel as soon as I walked in, so I will definitely return the favor on that one.
No,
so I mean, Darron, no need to keep your mouth shut on that last question. Like they're both establishments have excellent food. That's not the question at all. But I'm curious, Jose, right now, just speaking very generally, whiskey has certainly had its boom for the last, like, let's say two plus decades. Still very much going on, don't get me wrong, but some of the spirits that you mentioned that you focus a little more on at fine and rare, the mezcals, the tequilas, the gin, these are having their own moment right now. And having been there since 2016ish to 2017, what's been your experience as that boom has happened with I don't want to say alternative spirits, but alternatives to whiskey, let's say?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like mezcal, tequila have had a big boom in this couple of years compared to any other spirit. But it's also been really hard to come by, especially after COVID and everything. I think for all industries, I feel like whiskey and wine, anything at this moment. But yeah, I feel like all these spirits that we bring in are really good to like encourage people to try new things other than whiskey.
And, do either of you have to kind of divide your loyalties on your favorite spirit to get people to try new things?
I mean, we're obviously in a capitalistic nature of employment, so unfortunately, we do have to try and upsell. I mean, I like to work with the customer as much as possible. I mean, as Jose mentioned before, the main ethos of both bars is to make sure that the table of two, the table of 10 enjoy their experience and will be coming back. That's the main goal of our group. I like to work with. I mean, my favorite question generally, you've seen our menu, David, in both bars. Our menu is a small, short story. So a lot of times what I do is when I see a customer open the book, I literally ask them, are you looking for specific? Are you looking for bourbon, rye, scotch? Are you asking for tequilas? What? You try and get a feel on them quickly. And especially in a busy bar, it helps, I think, for both on the customer's end, when they see the staff are this responsive. I can very happily throw you a menu and say, go nuts. When you have a staff member actually taking their time to stand with you and go through, what have you had before? Or have you tried this? Are you looking to try something new? Would you like to try something more high end? You explain about the bottle keep system in both bars, and a lot of times customers don't realize that a good collection of the whiskey around them is actually customers' bottles. That's always quite a kind of a wow factor for a lot of new customers. But no, I think I like this idea of the upsell. For me is always a fun part of it. You're obviously feeling very proud. You're doing your job. So if the customer wants a 15-year-old Bowmore and they haven't had the 18 or 21, then it is my job to, and again, this goes back to the training and for all staff, including myself, is to have that knowledge to be able to upsell is very key. I could happily sit and sell the Bowmore 15 to a customer, for example, but if we're sitting on an 1821 Aston Martin 2125 small batch 26 single barrel, whatever, by having that knowledge and being able to convey that to the customer, the customer 9 times out of 10 is mostly impressed by this idea. Okay, I didn't know about this. They're generally intrigued, and then you're kind of obviously you're trying to upsell that whiskey. So if you have the information available, if you have been trained as we do for the staff and the knowledge that they're given, then they're able to make that customer's experience better. One thing I always tell my staff is that if a customer has a 15, offer the 18. If they have a 12, offer the 15. If they're having a single barrel bourbon, offer them the cask strength. So always give them options, because a lot of times I've definitely found after COVID, there was a period of time I noticed a lot of people were very stuck in their way. They ordered what they want, they didn't deviate. I can imagine this was probably a mix of monetary issue, so to speak, after COVID, probably not working. I think that's so that people would generally order something a little bit less expensive or something they know the flavor of and they know they're going to like. What's great to see now is that you're starting to see people again coming out of their shell. Customers coming in want to try new stuff. Fans of the 21-year X, Y, and Z now want to try the 25, or they want to try a single edition or a cask strength. That was a big enjoyment of mine, pre-COVID, and it definitely took a knock after we saw there was less want to try, rare and expensive whiskeys. So we're seeing that kind of climb back again.
Definitely. And when you were, I think Darron, I might have asked you this when I was at Flatiron Room, Jose, when I was at Fine and Rare. I think you might have been off that night, one of those rare nights off. So my apologies on that. Yeah, when you sit down at a place and you see a menu that is, as I said, literally a book of thousands of choices. I mean, I've been fortunate to taste upwards 1,500-1,600 things so far over tasting career, and it's still quite intimidating to have that kind of put in front of you and be like, choose something like that. So, and there are plenty of bars out there where they do just kind of lay it in front of you and come back 10 minutes later and say, all right, what would you like? And I'm like,
exactly.
What? I'm still on page 2. What do you mean? What do I want?
Yeah.
I'm looking these things up on my phone. Like, what is this brand from?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of customers, when they see this big book being placed in front of them, they get very overwhelmed. So this is when our staff training comes in. I'm like, what do you drink? Maybe I could recommend you. I could help you with something. Choose something nice for yourself. But also, I feel like with people, a story. If you're gonna recommend something and you give them a story about the whiskey, get them interested in it, they're more leaning to want to try something new rather than just, hey, do you want to try something good or that I tried last week, and just place it in front of you. Most people just want to hear something, a story behind the whiskey before they even feel interested in them purchasing something up. Like if you're trying to upsell as well.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point Jose's made. We very recently went to Kentucky. Oh, no, pardon me. God, you can tell it's still the morning. Texas, wasn't it, Jose? Yeah. So a Scotsman's geographical memory is terrible at this time of the morning. We were in Texas. We actually went down to pick out a single barrel from Milliman Green. And I'm sure, David, Heather Green, obviously a fantastic Somali, unbelievable whiskey knowledge, whiskey blender. Worked at the Flatiron Room. If I go by memory, first female on the Scottish whiskey board. So, I mean, these are the kind of trips that, that create stories, as Jose's saying. So it's great when a customer asks for a whiskey and you can go, oh, I was literally at the distillery. I can give you information. I can tell you about the barrels. And again, yeah, it goes back to staff training. And I mean, definitely these books that we have are huge. A lot of times, I mean, I think Jose is probably the same as me. You sit the book down and you wait a couple of seconds just to see the customer's face go, sorry, I asked for the menu. And you have to go, no, that is the menu. You know, take your time. It's rather long, you know. And I tend to watch it exactly as you're saying. People, when they flick through, they don't really pay attention sometimes because I don't think they realize that every page actually has something on it. So we get a lot of people that just flick through and, oh, where's the cocktails? Oh, that would be page 7. You're on page 45 in the middle of the Irish section or whatever. So I think as Jose put, you know, once you, a good part of our staff training again is this idea of ensuring that our staff understand if you're new to a bourbon, if let's say a customer asks you about a bourbon, you don't know, let's say the taste profile or the char number or whatever. If you know something about the distillery or the brand, and you can even give that bit of information, whiskey, gin, rum, I think Jose kind of nailed it on the head there. It really helps the customer to then feel maybe comfortable about making a certain purchase. You know, so it's I suppose the same way if you walk into a car dealership, the guy just points at a car and you buy it. I don't think that's going to happen. You have to know about the car. So I think the same thing applies to our staff training and knowledge. We have to have that little bit of, well, did you know this X, Y, and Z? Did you know this distillery created this? Because it really helps to kind of create a communication and I wouldn't say a friendship, that's maybe a bit too much, but you know, it creates a communication with the public that allows you to sell.
Curious about their offerings. I'm proud to have many of those bottles on my shelves and love sharing them with friends. Whenever I
got to let me know when that Mylan Green
Sam and to the team for joining the
barrel comes in, because I just talked to Blair Alt a couple of weeks ago. I'm trying to talk to Heather as well for Mylan Green, but also
the most
for her
exclusive
book.
Whiskey in the world, and
of course she's all over the place. But
born in Edinburgh,
everything.
The Scotch Malt Whiskey Society is the
Blair
world's
was
largest
amazing.
With over 30,000
she was
members
absolute salt of the earth. She was just such a
They bottle each cask of whiskey as is.
Yeah,
no
that was I think one of my favorite points again is meeting the people making the whiskey.
With new whiskeys released every week,
absolute
the
salt
Scotch
of the
Malt
earth.
Whiskey Society offers the opportunity
I always like the
to
kind of
taste
like working
spirits
class,
straight from
hard
the
work,
cask.
Covered boots dirty.
I've been a member for over 2 years now, and I've loved the chance to explore my favorite distilleries.
She walked out the distillery and she was like covered in like craft and barley, and just walk up and big hefty handshake, and she was really
the passion behind it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, she was awesome.
Scotch Malt Whiskey Society releases
I think
20 plus
the
bottles
barrel selection
we
chose. I think Jose and I we have very similar flavor profiles that we like.
Gin,
I definitely like peated whiskey. I think a little bit more than
in fact,
Jose.
my favorite
That's
recent bottling
probably in my blood.
was corn whiskey from the largest family-owned
the barrel we
distillery in the
selected
US.
was fantastic. The fun point of that again was it's maybe about 11 a.m., 11:30 in the morning.
This is a bottle that people
Texas heat. I think I was wearing all black with boots,
and it was only available.
And we're sitting trying cast around. I mean, it's not. I'm making this sound like it's a hard job.
If you're interested in joining,
we're sitting pulling whiskey from the barrel. Very happy, very happy and comfortable. But I think by about 12 o'clock, I was like feeling a little inebriated, let's say, after trying maybe 6 or 7 casts around.
20% off an annual membership.
It's hard work. Yeah, we don't get the praise that was there. It's very hard work.
That stands for Scotch
it
Malt
sounds
Whiskey
just awful.
Society.
I really there's
I will
an
also be
EEC
putting link and code in my bio
there for
and
sure,
show notes
but,
for this. And
there's a tiny violin
Thank you
playing
to the
somewhere
Scotch Malt Whiskey Society for joining the
I
Whiskey
think I
Ring
hear it.
podcast as our new sponsor. And please visit smwsa.
No, I understand what you mean. Though it's I've heard stories of both like the Texas heat,
20% off your
being
annual
in the
membership.
top of the rick house in the summer. At the same point being, in picking a barrel in Minnesota or Wisconsin in the winter, where it's negative 20 outside and it's not that much warmer in the rick house, but that's where you're tasting things. But I definitely do want to try that when it comes out. Are there, having just come back from Mylan Green from Texas, are there places for both of you, and really, I mean, every question here is for both of you, but are there places for each of you that you haven't gotten to yet that are like on your top 3 list?
I need to think of that. Jose, have you got any ideas?
I have not visited Buffalo Trace yet, which is I'm planning to do this summer. Hopefully by August, I'll get to go and try some amazing whiskeys. Yeah, Buffalo Trace is definitely on the top of my my list. Like to visit Scotland, obviously, and. At this point, I would like to visit Seattle, try to visit West End.
Okay, all good choices.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had the luck of my wife, as I said, is American. She did stay in Glasgow at a period, and we did quite a lot of tours. In Scotland, I've probably done about 25 to 30, I'd say, top of my head, distilleries. I've had the good fortune of going to Buffalo Trace. That was my first trip really to kind of foray into real hands-on with bourbon. And we had Freddie, our phenomenal inductee to the Hall of Fame, giving us a tour, who has the most dazzling white smile I've ever seen in my life. But the guy gave us just an absolute hands-on tour, and I'm sure, as you know, David, Buffalo Trace, it's a small city. You know, it's like if you know, like Bourbonville or Bourbon Land or whatever you call it, like a theme park. You know, and they're building obviously more warehouses and rickhouses, and the size of it was unbelievable to me when I first went there. I'm trying to think I mean, to be fair, any distillery I've always enjoyed just going to. It could be a small, you know, like craft style distillery, or a brand new startup, or a traditionally old and, you know, very well known, established. I'm kind of happy to go to every and all. There's not one that stands out. In America at the moment, there's not one that really stands out. I had the good fortune to go Old Forester, Angel's Envy, Wild Turkey when we were in Kentucky. I'd like to see the Macallan, just for I know it's just been redone and it's a stunning example of new architecture.
Oh yeah.
So I'd like to see it just for that purpose. But there's not one, admittedly, that stands out. I apologize if I'm being rude to any distillery that I'm not mentioning. But there's not any tour I've always enjoyed.
I mean, there's close to 3,000 distilleries in the U.S. alone nowadays. So I mean, not all doing whiskey, of course, but I mean, still close to 3,000. So if I would be more impressed if you were like this random one in a state that has 2 distilleries for some reason, and it's like, that's the one that I really want to go to. I would have been almost skeptical when you said that, but
I think the issues at times as well, I think, and Jose could probably back me up here, is the amount of information that Jose and I at times have to have in our brains regarding the amount of whiskies and expressions that we are selling. When you actually ask a question such as like one specific, it's amazing how hard it is for me to kind of narrow that down. I'm thinking of like too many. My head is kind of battering around about 50 different distilleries. But
totally fair. I'll admit, I'm going down to Kentucky again. I was just there over Memorial Day weekend, going down there again in the last week of August 21st. And you know, I also have not been to Buffalo Trace. I've driven by it a couple times to other distilleries, but that was my first trip to Kentucky. So I mean, there's not much time to do. So this will be the second one. Definitely going back to a few places. But yeah, it seems like a full, just like a college campus. Like everything is self-contained there.
Yeah, it's huge. It's absolutely amazing.
I got the same feeling walking to or driving through Heaven Hill, where it's just the main road and, you know, 7 to 9 story rick houses just dotting the landscape, closer than you think they should be together, especially given their history. And but they're all there. I would say you should go back to, just for the aesthetic experience, the new Four Roses experience, where their visitor center just really elevates the Spanish style buildings. It's a little more open than the previous one. It was beautiful just to enjoy a pour on the porch there in a giant chair. And also, I know that I didn't get to visit this because they were still working on it when I was down there, but Wild Turkey they built a new visitor center during COVID, and then decided to redo it again like half a year later. So they were still in construction when I was there, but that's going to be a beautiful one overlooking the river and the crossing over. So just for aesthetic reasons, I would definitely go back to each of those.
Well, Wild Turkey was that was one that we hit up as well when we were down. And I remember when you walked into the main center, I love the wood effect. They had that beautiful walkway. It's almost kind of like a mausoleum or church style, where they have the staves going in. I'm trying to remember. Obviously, we definitely went pre-COVID, so I'm trying to remember if there was a visitor center to be sat in, but it was not by the river. So I'm guessing, as you're saying, they must have been redoing everything up. We were inside, I think, to the left of the main rick house. So I'm going by memory, but that was a beautiful distillery.
Yeah. Everything around it covered in blanket on the name of the particular fungus, but you know, that black fungus that grows wherever whiskey grows. And drinks more than any of us does. So no, it's wonderful, and I'm looking forward to go there. Looking forward to Scotland as well. I think the Macallan experience and going there again. I love whiskey architecture, and in many, I mean, in both establishments where you guys work, that is whiskey and spirits architecture as well. You're getting that experience because you're walking in and it is a speakeasy style and or just this very elevated dining experience style. And for me, at least, I walk in and the upsell, Darron, that you're talking about, I'm already in my head. I'm like, I shouldn't get the regular Highland Park here. I should get the single barrel or the one up there. So for me, the architecture helps with the sell just as much as it would at a distillery itself.
Of course. Yeah. I 100% agree with it. I think that's something that I find so specifically. I mean, as I'm saying, I've been at Flatiron now for coming close to 6 years. And every day I walk in, when the lights go down, I still stop for a second and look around. The care and the effort, obviously, that Tommy put into creating that bar, and fine and rare as well. I mean, the backlighting, or the bottlings, small things, just a little bit of accent lighting. It's a beautiful thing when you do it properly. I love fine and rare on the stage, how they have the little accents going round behind the piano. There's a phrase that I like to use, which is extremely cheesy, and I apologize, but you drink with your eyes. So when you walk into an establishment, especially in somewhere like Fine and Rare and Flatiron Room, there's never been a customer, I think, that's walked in and not instantly neck gone up, because high ceilings, you've got the beautiful chandeliers, you have the giant stage up front, and then you're seeing all the bottles surrounding you. And I love the aspect, the aesthetic that Tommy thankfully lets me play around with. I like the bottles, some of the higher end stuff, your Lafroig 30s, or your, as I was saying, some of the older stuff we have, Talisker 30, Dalmore 35s. I like to keep the bottle beside the box. I mean, the again, as I say, the drink with your eyes part. I mean, a lot of these boxes nowadays, and the actual design going into the bottle and the box, they're spending almost as much as creating the whiskey on the design. Which isn't a bad thing. It's an aesthetic. You see a sexy looking bottle or something that looks very, kind of dark and brooding, then it kind of creates that want to know what the liquid is. So I think both bars do that very well, which, you create an aesthetic that you want to draw the customer to come to.
And speaking of Macallan, we should just note that they're, at least I just saw this yesterday, that they have, I think it's called the Chronicles. I could be wrong, and I'll double check that, but comes in a green book about 15 by 15 inches. It has full pages with the story of the Macallan, story of the whiskey, and then it goes into a cutout, almost like you would cut out the middle of a book to put a bottle in it. So you flip through, and it's got the bottle shape around it.
Yeah, they add in. I'm trying to think. The Smuggler's Excise, La Cranza. I think they did that. They had the excise that's still a book. They definitely. I mean, the aesthetic of the boxes themselves at times. I mean, one of my favorite was always Balvenie. I love the wooden cases with like the little silver, ignet around the side, or a little splash of copper. It's like simplistic but very elegant. And then you have things that, as you said, I mean, Macallan had the Harmony collection that they used. The box itself, I think, was cocoa. It was the leaf of the cocoa, so it was extremely recyclable. They were trying to touch upon this idea of their ethos in regarding to, I suppose, to an extent, they're kind of like challenged to climate change. They're really trying to watch their output. So something as simple as creating a label that is a lot more recyclable and easy to break down. It's a nice. Again, customers will buy into this kind of thing. So it's a smart business venture.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, deciding where I want to go next here. I think, actually, jumping back to what you said about Heather Green, and this goes for both establishments. With all of the training that you guys receive to be on the floor and be talking about bottles and brands and styles and regions, just looking through a cursory history, the Flatiron Room, Fine and Rare, Goodnight Group is also seeded many other places. So as much as you retain people because you've got all that training and investment in your people. When someone leaves, they bring all of that with them. So Heather Green being an excellent example. You know, are there other people that you want, or other brands you want to shout out as people who have been there and who have kind of taken that knowledge further? Because, and I asked that because there are certain distilleries, certain establishments that you hear about over and over that people have worked there. I think about, for example, for a distillery, Kings County, so many people from Kings County have gone to, I mean, Helen Nicole Austin Dickel now is the master distiller there, and so many people there have gone on and taken that original ethos with them. So do you see that with Goodnight Group, and where have some people gone?
I mean, Jose, I think you could, I'm trying to remember, Devin is a good example, I'm sure.
Yeah, Devin started as a head bartender at Funny and Rare, and moved on to being the brand ambassador for Paul John, and now he's the brand ambassador for Westland. So it's definitely a lot of people, I believe, that come out. We also had bartender at the Flatiron Room who ended up opening his restaurant as well. So people who are in this industry obviously are definitely moving on to better opportunities, especially in this industry.
Yeah, we also have a lot of our current marketing coordinator, Sarah Valvo. She was a floor manager at Flatiron, also bartender. And at one point, she was doing some rep work for Sunshine Reserve. We've got a lot of staff that will use the knowledge of the bar, and then obviously can then supplement that into a different career path. Sorry, when I say different career path, I mean it's still involved with hospitality or whiskey, but a different path that they are currently on. I think that's also, the good aspect of the business. I mean, you see people like Jose and myself that have been there for a long time. The people that do stay there, I mean, you have a lot of good option if you ever wanted to leave the business itself. The information and the training and the knowledge that we have learned over the period of time that we've worked here is only going to help us further our career down the line. I think it's a good example. Jose and I were lucky enough to get awarded by the whiskey icons of whiskey, the Flatiron Room on Best Bar Group. Yeah, the magazine. We got I won Best Bartender. Jose was runner up, and these kind of things are obviously, I mean, they're great accolades. I'm very proud of them. I'm sure Jose is as well. It creates the ability, you want to stay with the company, but if you were to leave, we have the ability through the company to further our own careers. So it's a kind of like nod to the hat of the ethos that Tommy has. He likes to retain staff. He likes staff to work the way up. Most staff is, I think Jose is a great example, as you said, bar back to bar manager, and I was bartender to bar manager. We have a lot of individuals that started in our bars, something as simple as a busser, to then backer to server to. So the ethos in our bar is that if you want to learn and dedicate and push yourself, you have the means to do so in these and in our locations. And I think I'm trying to think of some more people. There's definitely more that I know top of my head, but you unfortunately scheduled a Saturday morning podcast there. My brain's my brain's not 100%. No, I think the ethos of our bar very much is this. You work hard, you'll get what you need out of it. And if you ever were to move on, I know that a good example, Tom is always very supportive of these decisions. But you see the staff that we have. A lot of our core staff have been with the Goodnight Group for a period of time. And I think, as you said, that speaks volumes of the business that we're in.
Absolutely. Again, I know, or rather I should say, I don't know of an establishment or group that isn't struggling to both retain and find new staff right now as things open back up. And the fact that you guys, and not just you guys, but you guys as representatives of a larger staff group are still there speaks, as you said, it speaks volumes. I do have to ask, Jose, any resentment towards Darron? You got first, you got second on that one? You don't have to answer. I'm kidding.
Whatsoever.
I'm kidding.
Next year.
There's always next year.
Yeah, exactly. Healthy competition. Hey,
I mean, if it's 1-2 in the same group, I mean, there's not much.
We cleaned up, David. I mean, the Goodnight Group.
Yeah, you guys did.
we did pretty good. Best global bar group 2022, best bartender, runner-up best bartender. And the accolades that the Goodnight Group and Flatiron and Fenrir have won. I mean, I'm not going to sit and list all these off because there's too many. But again, it speaks volumes of the establishment.
And honestly, I had on my question list to ask, which accolades and awards mean the most. But I think I'm not even going to ask that one, because it seems like, number one, everything is a group venture. It's you win best bartender. It's because the group helped get you there. And plus, as you said, the list of awards just goes on and on. So, I
could happily say, like, I'm definitely very proud of the best bartender. If I remember talking to Jose, I probably used a couple of expletives and had no idea why, in my opinion, why I received it. But I think you're right. I mean, it goes down to the ethos of the teamwork and kind of camaraderie in both locations. Like, I very much told my staff that this award was like the award for all of us. Like, I'm very happy to take it. Don't get me wrong, it's on my resume. I'm very happy, but it's great to have it for the team. But the amount of times, I mean, best, I think we were Whiskey Icon's best bar last year, 2021. Runner-up this year, and then the best bar group this year. So it's just continuous, and I think it shows the dedication of, like, the uppers and management and Tommy himself. We could, I think, very much to an extent, you could say, like Scotch whiskey, we could sit on our laurels and traditions and go, right, we're great, we don't have to change. Tommy is always pushing the boundary of both bars, both locations. We're always looking for new whiskies, new ideas. The food menus always change, the cocktails always change. We're trying to really give the best experience to the consumer, and I think I'm probably repeating myself again. I apologize, but I think the awards show that we don't get these awards for sitting doing nothing. So it's I think it's a nice little nod to the work and dedication that goes into both venues.
Absolutely. So I know we are running towards the top of the hour. I have one more question for both of you, which goes back to the education point, which is both establishments are also known for education, for running classes and tastings and things. And I'd love to hear just both of your kind of processes on, you hear someone's interested in doing a tasting of any spirit. It doesn't have to be whiskey, of any spirit, of any level. How much do you ask of them in advance in terms of what they're looking for, and how much, and what's your process for designing what they're going to taste?
Jose, you want me to go first now?
Well, in most of the situations, Tommy is the one that always gets involved in, like, choosing our pretty much our tastings or anything that's gonna happen. So he's the one that pretty much selects every single whiskey according to obviously what the person or the one scheduling tasting is trying to taste. His knowledge is also pretty extensive. So yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I think that, I think this was something that was always quite new to me. As I said, I've bartended since I was 17. Tommy is extremely hands-on to the point that he actually orders for both bars. So he will create the order list of the new whiskies coming in, everything coming in. Obviously, Jose and myself meet with reps, ambassadors, and new expressions are coming out. We'll try these and then relay to Tommy, we'd like to get this in, and Tommy will do his best to get them in. In terms of the tastings, we have, I can speak for Flatiron Room. I've done a number of tastings at Fenrir as well, but for Flatiron Room, it could be a Scotch selection. It could be a journey of American whiskey. It could be a high-end Scotch selection. I did a Father's Day tasting recently that was a good mix of high-end bourbons and rye. We try and tailor it to the client as best as possible. So if you're looking for a specific, let's say the client comes with a specific monetary value in which they want to pay for a tasting of 10, 12, whatever people, we'll look into the whiskies that would suit their evaluation. We look into the taste of it. We always try and provide whiskies that are maybe not as well known as. We're obviously wanting to educate. So you always want to at least have maybe something that a customer is familiar with, but we always try and throw in an oddball or something new, or a whiskey that I would imagine a good example would be like a Scotch or a Taiwanese Cavalan, maybe that a lot of the American consumer doesn't know as much. And the tastings themselves, we're very hands-on. I've always loved the presentation we do. We create our own mats. our information is on the match sheet, or Instagram, or social media, etc. We tend to give little plates of just kind of a little charcuterie board, or maybe a cheese board that's going to accompany the tasting, which again I think is a great example of just ensuring that there is a sensory experience at both bars. The enjoyment, as you know, I'm sure, David, of drinking whiskey is fantastic, but that ability to then have whiskey with, say, a nice cheese or a piece of cured meat, it heightens the experience again. So I think it's an aspect of my job I love doing. I love doing these classes when I get the opportunity to do them. I like meeting new people with a passion or enjoyment for whiskey. New people that have never tried whiskey. These classes are very fun, very informative, and people always, once these classes are finished, very few times the full class will leave. People will stay at the bar, they'll start ordering whiskey. So it's a win-win for us. We're helping to educate the public, and then thankfully, if they're enjoying their experience, they stay in the bar and they'll continue to have some more whiskey and try things.
And that's the best advertising you can get. It's just you go there and you stay. So Darron, Jose, thank you so much for getting up early, for down in the coffee and the espressos you need to be on this today. I really appreciate you taking the time. For listeners, make sure to follow, and of course I'll put all the info in the show notes as well, but make sure to follow both establishments, Flatiron Room, Fine and Rare, on all the social media platforms, especially Instagram. The photos and the videos are just incredible. Go in and visit and ask questions, enough questions to make them think, not so many that they can't attend to other patrons, of course, but ask the questions, try the new whiskeys. I promise you won't be disappointed. Darron, Jose, hold on with me just for a sec after I close out the recording. And so again, patronize, follow Whiskey My Wedding Ring, Whiskey Ring Podcast, and all the socials as well. And I'll see you next week.